Hello everyone, and welcome to the Wendigo Central YouTube channel, previously the What Have You Done YouTube channel. And today we are here with two stories. Both have been written by me, and one is older, one is new. And this is also going to be read by me and Asriel Werikai. And enjoy. Story 1. It is said when you take a picture of someone, you capture their soul in a camera. It is also said if you print it off, that picture contains the soul itself, and you can control them with it. I'm not even sure where to start. Do you know what the primordial soup is? A veritable ocean of elements, all floating around randomly. And through millions of years of time, eventually the right set of random circumstances came to pass, and the elements were able to connect together and form the world's first single-cell organism. Now, that's a really boiled-down version of it, but I'm sure you get the gist of it. Fast forward a few billion years to the early 1990s, when the internet use began to rapidly accelerate. Every home had a computer, and new connections between computers were opening on a by-the-second basis. Trillions of bytes of data began to transfer around the world at the speed of light. Music, text, sound, and most importantly, pictures. Now, when you take a picture of someone and capture their soul, what happens when that picture is converted to data and placed on a hard drive? Does the soul follow? 15 years later, we believe so. We believe that when you take a picture of someone and upload it to the computer alongside with the image data of a blueprint, the person's soul itself is printed on the file. Look at your pictures folder. How many souls that reside in that folder alone? That's just the beginning though. These soul blueprints each retain a piece of the puzzle, parts of the soul itself as well. Very recently, a group of hackers, including myself, who referred to themselves as the Cardinals, took an interest to this theory and began experiments. They found anomalies within the binary sequences of images based on similar features of the person they'd taken a picture of. A binary DNA, if you will. Now, these hackers had come to possess a set of 3 extremely important data files. 1 AVI file, 1 JPEG file, and 1 .mp3 file. Each of which possessing interesting, unexplainable qualities. The first Cradle AVI depicts what appears to be a group of teenagers with a low-quality video camera exploring the basement of a house. The quality of the video was near completely distorted, beyond any comprehensibility. The video is very low quality. However, the audio was left intact. For most of the video, the camera is passed around the group, handed back and forth, and jerked around too much to make anything notice out. But near the end, the camera turns at an odd angle, and you can clearly make out a young girl standing in the corner facing a wall. Her long and black hair, she is wearing some form of white dress. You see her only for a split second, but the people who have seen the video claim that there just seems to be something wrong with her. A bit deformed, but not in any way anyone can explain. But the truly peculiar part of this video is what happens to the user's computer at the end of it. On the last second of the video, if not already so, the video will force full screen itself. Along with this, you are left with 1 second looping clip of a window in a wall. It loops 15 times and the girl is seen again, standing on the other side of the window with her back to the viewer, slowly wavering back and forth. After a few moments, the video ends and the user's computer permanently shuts down. Inspection has shown that the entire registry becomes completely corrupt, down to the RAM, requiring the user to do a total wipe and reinstall, both on hardware and software. The second file is known as needles.mp3. This sound file, when played, is played for about 3 minutes. It is extremely distorted. One can occasionally make out some form of voice talking, but the sound is some form of growling, rolling, crackled roar. Users who listen to the file often experience extreme nausea and loss of balance for a brief period of time. The final file is known as batteringman.jpg. The file name has nothing to do with what the actual picture depicts. Instead, just plays a haphazard mess of overlaid meshed images and dolls in a hallway. There seems to be an image of a man standing with his head cast down in the background, but the image is too distorted to make anything out, much like the other files. The image, when downloaded, opened the user's desktop and will proceed to stay permanently open no matter what program it is opened through. Not only that, the program becomes disabled. Nothing else happened. The image just permanently sits there on your desktop, unclickable, unminimizable, and you're just left there with the man's invisible gaze starting to stare at you. From what the group of hackers were able to discern, this file seems to have recompiled into the data something along the lines of CMDAO, yet as it complex and intricate as the program is, if it works across all OM's platforms, no one knows who the original creators is. In fact, few people have ever heard of it, as the file is uncopyable nor sendable. This, in fact, further adds to the mystery, as often receivers of the file will obtain it from random anonymous emails posted on forums on a download link, posing the question, how is that the poster able to upload it? If you ever see any of these files, refrain from downloading any of them. They all have varying detrimental effects on your computers, from practically taking out your whole registry, corrupting System 32, freezing your mouse, or crashing your computer beyond repair. Now, onwards. This group of hackers, the Cardinals, took to analyzing these 3 files and comparing their other behaviors. They had heard of other such odd files, images, data, etc., but they were never able to get their hands on them, at least as far as we know, though rumor states they in fact were able to locate and collect all of the known files, like the original smile.jpg, barbie.avi, or even not even the grifter was able to escape their grasp. Rumor states, but the rumor also states the grifter video even exists. That's another story. Nonetheless, all these files in hand, the group lined up files up and began to meticulously work through binary 01 at a time, checking for similar strains and a series of binary that matched. And they did manage to successfully do so. At least the legend states. The results was 7 individual execute files that did nothing, simply a gibberish piles of zeros and ones. The endless puzzle over their files, they each taking an execute each. They decide to name them after themselves: lust, gluttony, greed, envy, sloth, wrath, and pride. At last, they attempted to line the files up. Remarkably, something odd happened. The copies of the files quite suddenly mashed together. The result was a single executably already named betterlybreathing.exe. And what of this file? Well, not much is known after that point. They were too smart to just execute it. They analyzed the file in every possible way: hex, binary, conversions, anything to figure out what this odd file would do, to no avail. Even after forming it together, it was an even bigger jumble of ones and zeros, and made no more sense than the separate executes. They backed the file up on a flash drive and proceeded to run it. That was the last command found to run on their destroyed computers a week later. Their corpses had been disfigured beyond recognition. Description of the corpses stated that it almost seemed as if they had been brutally slashed across their faces and arms. Every square inch of skin that had been battered and had mutilated, almost microwaved, and then sliced repeatedly by micro-thin razor. The government attempted to hush up the event, but there was some media leakage, and because the criminals had been keeping a blog amongst themselves and a few close friends, it's closed down and deleted now, so don't go trying to find it. They quickly sputtered out as per what they had been attempting to accomplish. And if it was, or was not related to their terrible deaths. And while the flash drive, a friend who knew of the existence later checked the home of the group and was able to find it. According to reports, the drive was found in the pocket of one of the group that had been taken into custody by the police and simply vanished. The trail continues far more thorough. The file resurfaces every few weeks around the globe. Governments attempt to cover it up. But some media leaks out, of course. Look to the news for people mutilated in their own homes by a murderer, their computers stolen, and their throats slit. If you get this corrupted email with an attachment labeled betterbreathing.exe, do not open it. For fuck's sake, do not open it. Story 2, featuring Asriel Werikai.
Everything goes extinct. It's estimated that more than 99.9% of all species that have ever lived on the planet Earth are now extinct. The dodo bird was hunted to extinction by the late 1600s, and its death, as an entirety, is directly attributed to human actions. Similarly, the moa, known in folklore as the giant bird, the roc, ceased to exist during recorded human history. The Tasmanian tiger was last seen during the 20th century, yet reports persist to this day from the least inhabited stretches of the Australian outback that it survives in the night, none of which can be proved, or, more importantly, disproved. We have witnessed mass death in the skies and the valleys, in the mountains and the islands, in the echoing fields that stretch all the way to the horizon, and in the darkest forests that we have ever known. But there is another world, right here on Earth, which happens to be, paradoxically, more common than, but less familiar to, us. The ocean. In the depths of the ocean, the same rules of extinction, natural selection, and survival of the fittest all still apply. There have been stories of creatures, unexplainable creatures, rising out of the ocean to strike fear into the hearts of humans for as long as we've been venturing out onto the seas. Most are easily dismissed due to the inevitable ignorance of our ancestors, and their lack of understanding of the world. It is laughable today to think that manatees could be misconstrued as mermaids, or humpback whales were called as ghastly sea serpents. But it was once common knowledge that there were great and terrible monsters in the ocean. These legends slowly made their way from the precautions of the known world to the faded, aged pages of stories of tall tales and myths. As science, through technology, shed so much light through so much darkness, the belief in the monsters of the deep slowly, but not without a fight, died. As previously predicated, one way or another, everything goes extinct. But the oceans of the Earth remain a very mysterious place. Take, for example, the coelacanth. The coelacanth was thought to be extinct since the end of the Cretaceous period, until December 23, 1938, when a living specimen was dragged onto a fishing boat. Millions and millions of years of certainty in the fossil records shattered in a moment as brief as it was frightening. This creature's existence, at least its living existence, could lead one to postulate that equally such impossible beasts could somehow survive the test of time, millions and millions of years of time. This leads us to the story of July 14, 1896. On this day, it is said that a creature of bizarre and frightening proportions came to the place known as Brent Rock in Marshfield, Massachusetts. The creature was first spotted by two local children named Patrick Kelly and Sean Flanagan. Mr. Kelly, being of only 9 years old at the time, described the creature as if it drudged itself out of the sea, lurching in slow, wavering increments as if moved more by the tide than by its own volition. He claimed that it resembled a sort of crab or lobster, approximately 4 to 6 feet wide and about 20 feet long. Its numerous appendages had a sluggishness that he likened to the way that some insects live too far into the winter, and are incapable of doing anything more than simply dying. He said that it had 2 distinct pincers or claws in its front, and that it had a great many eyeballs. Mr. Kelly and Mr. Flanagan claimed that they were so enthralled by this creature that they dared to walk up to the shore and see what they could of it, as it appeared to be, like a beached whale, simply going through the motions of life in its death thralls. The 2 boys were within a few feet of the creature when young Mr. Flanagan put his hand upon the cold, hard shell of what could best be described as the creature's head. Mr. Patrick Kelly stated that young Flanagan looked back at him and made a comment as to how thick and wretched was the stench of the beast. Just as the creature's eyes widened in a frenzy and grabbed the boy, piercing his ribcage and taking a bite out of the back of his skull in a loud wet smack that Mr. Kelly claimed, more than 80 years later, still resonated in his mind as vividly on his deathbed as it did at that very moment. Mr. Kelly ran as fast as his legs could take him back to the town tavern, looking back only once for a lapse of time briefer than the tiniest fraction of a second. By the time the boy had made it possibly 1,000 feet, his skin burning and sweating and shaking all at the same time, none of which he would feel until days later, his heart sank as he saw that the creature was gone. Nowhere in sight, but there were tracks. Deep, strange tracks that ran too close together for the legs of a natural beast. Tracks that trailed more like those of a train. The biggest problem with these tracks, these meticulous tracings in the sand, was that they trailed far past the sand, into the pine trees, and therefore meant that they had been made, impossibly made, by that sluggish, murderous beast, far too quick for his eyes to have seen. The boy ran as quickly as his shambling legs could carry him to the Brant Rock pub, and he told the men of what best he could describe of what he had seen of his fallen friend before he collapsed in exhaustion. The men grabbed their guns and followed the tracks, the sun setting and their path lit by their oil lamps and crude torches. There are few accounts or testimonies of the men of this caravan mob, but it is distinctly noted in the newspaper of the time that 2 men did not return that night. It is known, to the best of records, that the creature was found at Perry Swamp, shot repeatedly, and eventually retreated into a subterranean cavern. The creature was described as being lobster or insect, centipede-like, making haunting wailing noises and moving at a rapid pace. It was articulated by more than one member of the killing party before the time of its death that the creature moved quicker than the human eye could see, in stark contrast to the initial portion of the testimony of Mr. Patrick Kelly. The creature was shot many times by more than 30 well-armed men. The creature was eventually wounded and butchered by the men to the point where it was incapable of defending itself. By this time, the creature was beneath the surface of the earth, in a cave, well known and equally well feared by the people of Brant Rock as being a place of dark and supernatural activity. The cave at Perry Swamp was a wet, murky, and ultimately appropriate place for such a creature to die. When the creature's hide had been thoroughly pierced, men went to work at its shell with axes and ice picks. After hours of laborious hacking, the creature's gizzards were finally spilled, releasing both a great deal of stench and intense air pressure. The pressure propelling the stench and the stench causing unprecedented reactions of sickness and disgust in the slayers of the beast. The entrance of the Perry Cave Swamp is, to this day, bricked up. The slaying of the beast brought no comfort to the community mourning its losses, and its death cast a nauseating, thick cloud over Brant Rock. The smell lasted for weeks, permeating longer than natural, a stench against the wind, which otherwise brought the smells of the swamp away from the town. The pressure, the unnatural, almost palpable pressure, persisted for years, literally years after the slaying of the creature. Initially, the people began to complain of terrible migraines and great difficulty sleeping, many suffering from nightmares of strange, bizarre creatures they had never imagined before. Several people were regularly sick and suffered from intense vomiting and chronic earaches. Many families left the place, never to return. Years later, in 1906, one of the first radio towers was set up at Brant Rock, and, after its construction, the bizarre pressure, the painful, nauseating pressure that could not be seen or smelled or felt, was gone. Or at least it was subdued enough for life to go on. The structure of the tower was unusual from radio towers of the early 20th century, and this tower was bizarre even from its contemporaries, as it contained unusual signs and symbols etched into the framework of its spires. Over the years, this tower fell into disrepair. Brant Rock became a vibrant community, and the story of July 14th, 1896 became nothing more than a myth. Today, there is a bizarre tower with unorthodox architectural traits that stands at Brant Rock. It has been abandoned for years, the people of Brant Rock suspecting problems with the structure such as a corrosive foundation, asbestos, and faulty plumbing. But no one dares to tear the structure down. It simply stands there, looming over the sea, as if watching, waiting for something equally as bizarre to show up. No one has ever seen a creature matching the depictions of the creature of 1896, at least not in size and physical characteristics. The creature's remains have never been exhumed from the cave at Perry Swamp, and nothing in the family of arthropods comes anything close to the eyewitness accounts of the creature, at least nothing known for many, many millions of years in the fossil records. Some creatures match several characteristics of the beast described, but all of them have been extinct for many, millions of years. But what are the odds of anything surviving that long? After all, everybody knows that, one way or another, everything goes extinct. Don't they?
Story 3. I don't know. I don't care what's going to happen to me. Let me start. My name is John Beleze, and I have seen the afterlife. Or lack of, or abundance of, I don't know how you'd say it. Going to have to keep this short and sweet. I don't have much time. The things you'd think of as angels are after me. They are not good. In fact, we have it all wrong. The man you think of as Lucifer is actually the good one. You see, they say history is written by the victor. And Christians thought they'd won. They are worshipping an evil, horrendous entity. It refers to itself as Avoroth. But it's just so loud. I can't take the noise. Look, I know we're all going to die. But the afterlife is nothing but torture and servitude towards Avoroth. I wish I never knew. I don't know what to do, but they say you end up with the devil if you kill yourself. I'm not going to wait for death. I have a pistol in the attic. Alright, here's a bonus story. It's only 2 sentences, so it's a classic. Can I lay in bed with you? She asked. Slowly creeping and honestly softly cooing, cuddling as she laid in the bed next to me. I woke up in sweats, clutching the dress she was buried in. Alright everyone, so that is our new, it's our new video, and I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and always remember, if you see anything,